Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round. I'm joined by my friend Patrick. Patrick, say hi.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
And as you just saw on our channel, Patrick and I just saw the new Scream the other night. We did our kind of first initial spoiler-free reactions. This video, we are going to very heavily get into spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, this is your warning. We're going to spoil this movie. We're probably going to spoil a lot of movies. And just watch this if you've seen every movie ever made. So first things first, I kind of want to get this out of the way. The new Scream movie, we both really enjoyed it. But
Yes.
Patrick, I'm really interested to hear your perspective on it. So in case you guys didn't know, I'm a huge horror fan. I've seen the whole, I rewatched all the Scream movies for this. I'd seen them before. I love the series. I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I love the Halloween series, as is on Patrick's shirt.
Yep.
And so I went into this as that die-hard horror fan and with all the awareness of the franchise. Patrick went into this never having seen any of the Scream movies. So I'm curious, in your own words, what were your thoughts on it from that perspective?
Okay. Um, Thank you very much, Dave, for that intro. And in terms of at least a little bit of background, like I do enjoy horror movies. I've seen like a lot of varied ones. Like I'm obviously a very big fan of John Carpenter's Halloween. I also enjoy like classic horror like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, An American Werewolf in London, and of course, anything with Vincent Price. So like The Mask of the Red Death, The Abominable Dr. Phibes,
You
and
you you are my Vincent Price expert, and
Mhm.
don't worry, folks, we will be doing some video on that at some point in the future. This guy knows his Vincent Price.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan, and I can't wait to eventually share my knowledge with that. But yes, back to the topic at hand. So I've heard about the Scream films. I was genuinely curious, but I just never got around to them. There's just so much to watch, like in terms of various ones, and I've been marathoning certain ones. Like for example, like I'm currently marathoning through the rest of the Halloween series, and but at least from my perspective, from seeing Scream 2022 for the first time, I have to say I really, really enjoyed it. I just loved how funny it got. I loved the uniqueness of the horror aspect. I mean, at its heart, it's a horror movie, but at the same time, though, it's a horror movie that makes you think in terms of the way it uses its commentary and meta critique in order to basically dissect all the little tropes and fun things that we all love about horror movies. And that's what really like drew me in. Like when I'm watching it, like I actually felt like at times it felt like a very 90s horror movie, even though it was set in the 2020s, which was very impressive and a huge credit towards the directors of the film and the writers who ultimately uh, brought that forth in the modern as a day, but at the same time though still being true to itself and still being true to its previous fan base. Like I said, this was my very first time, but I can fully understand why people who love the Scream movies would love something like this. Like I
Mhm.
enjoyed it so much in terms of just how funny it was, how crazy it got as I got, how like is it how like those little moments that just made me realize, you know what, I want to definitely check out like the older Scream films. I want to see like what they do, because from the primer you gave to me, Dave, like how the first one was was about going through all the tropes of horror movies and slasher films, and then it's second and then the second Scream about uh, sequels, third
Mhm.
about trilogies, four about is it remakes, and this is the requel, the
I
soft
actually think
reboot.
this one did the remake trend better than four did.
Yeah, I
But I'm curious, did you feel you said you could appreciate, what the Scream fans love. Did you feel going into this one that you were sort of did you ever feel like there was stuff that you didn't know that would have been good to like seeing characters like Dewey, Sydney, and Gail? Was there anything that you felt left out about not having seen the other movies, or did you think this movie kind of developed them enough that you didn't have to see the other ones?
That's a very excellent question. I think overall the movies definitely got the point across of like how important they were in terms of the different relationships. I think Officer Dewey definitely got the most most character development in terms of, his relationship with the two main female leads that made me realize, okay, this guy's very important. He also has like a lot of emotional baggage in terms of like what had happened in the past.
Oh,
And
definitely.
yeah, and that's what I got from it, where I did feel caught up enough. Um,
Hmm.
Gail, the character of Gail, you could definitely tell that there was some history. I wouldn't have known that she was like, so hard on people, or like or how aloof she could be. I didn't like necessarily like get that from her, especially like
Well,
unless I had seen the original.
part of that was Gail really grew over the franchise. In the first
Right.
one,
Okay.
she is this ruthless reporter willing
Right.
to do anything. And it's funny because in the first one, Sydney punches out Gail
Hmm.
for basically like stalking her and asking her really inappropriate personal questions about like her mom's death and all that. And
Hmm.
it's funny to see them go from she hated Gail, thought she was an opportunist, to
Yes.
now they're like they're like best friends who have this shared decades long trauma. And
Yes.
so that's a testament to how they've grown and developed her character over the five movies.
Ah, see, like I is it like that's a very excellent point then, because I wouldn't have known that myself. Like I said, being a first timer, like going
Mm-hmm.
into it, I wouldn't have
Watch the
seen that.
first one and see what Gail's like in that one.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm planning to definitely like revisit like the Scream series, because like I said, I just loved how the current like the most recent film I just watched in this franchise, how excellent they were, how clever and funny they were about the satire of the
Mm-hmm.
horror genre, as well as also like going a bit deeper into like the internet culture as well. Like I'm trying to remember that one character in which she was talking about like all the requel
Oh, you're
films that have
talking
been coming.
Randy's niece.
Yes, Randy. Yes,
I'm
exactly. Yeah,
sorry,
Randy's.
I forget her character, but it was Randy's niece who kind of takes the mantle of like the expert who explains it all.
Yes.
But
Yes,
go on.
exactly. Oh yeah, but yeah, like I is it but yeah, as the expert character, I loved how she basically, I think for the most part, just said exactly what a lot of people who love like older franchises, like myself, have been kind of thinking for a while. It's just, they try to do all these different things and it doesn't quite work out, or they go like, they try to take an idea and push it maybe a little too far, or they add like additional like modern day commentaries or modern day politics, and it just and tries to insert it into something that just doesn't always work, and that of course
Mm-hmm.
divides like a lot of people in terms of fan bases. And I just it is and I if you remember, like in the theater, like when she's starting to go into that, and I just turned to you, I'm like, that's exactly what I've been
You
thinking. And you
did.
could.
You did say that.
Right, and it's just plus like you could just hear everyone like just like like laughing, because like they know. I mean, we had a great crowd that night, because like you could tell they were the diehard Scream fans who were just coming in, and you could just hear them like laugh at the more comedic parts of it, but they also, I think like they also knew the same thing. It's like we've seen this
It's
kind of thing.
exactly, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into more so today is
Oh
so
yes.
this Scream movie, by all counts, it is a requel. So
Yes.
my preferred term is the sequel reboot. Some people call it
Okay.
a soft reboot. I call it a sequel reboot. And it
Okay.
is where it follows the original. It even follows the trend of titling your movie the same title as the original, but it's still a sequel. Look at
Right.
Candyman from 2021. Look at
Yes.
Halloween 2018.
Yepers.
And I've always been kind of annoyed when it's like, why do you have to call it the same? It's almost like It's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring in a new audience, and they're trying to make it so that there's just enough to connect it to the past,
hmm
but it's fresh enough that new people can come in. And, personally, when other franchises did it, I don't think it worked. Back in
Right.
2015, I made it no secret. I was not a big fan of Jurassic World or Star Wars Force Awakens.
hmm
And it's because they're basically just remakes of the original. And it's like, everyone's like, oh, but look what they did here. Look at this callback. Look at the nostalgia. And it's like, yeah, it's just reminding me of a movie that I like better.
Yes, exactly.
And
Agreed.
I'm definitely going to get angry comments for this. So be sure to leave your angry comment.
Yeah.
Halloween 2018 is a well made movie, but it doesn't do anything the original didn't already do. And all the things that people liked about it, and even with Halloween Kills, the things I keep hearing that people like are the callbacks to the original, to which I say, just go watch the original.
In the immortal words of Jay Sherman from The Critic, if it's a remake of a classic, just rent the classic.
Exactly. And I think, to what we're talking about, Scream is the only one of these sequel reboots that actually kind of works because it spends its entire runtime telling you why sequel reboots are the worst.
Exactly. I know exactly where you're coming from with that, and I really loved how like the meta-ness of the in movie of Scream, the Stab series, in
Mm-hmm.
which they go into the whole sequel part and the remakes, and even a Netflix styled series, which of course which even in the films universe is like, some people really like it, some people really have it, hate it, and then of course Stab 8, which was just so over the top and ridiculous that I'm not gonna lie, I got flashbacks from Halloween. Is it Halloween? Is it Resurrection? Is it with that one scene from Buster Rhymes, like
Oh
like
my
saying trick,
God.
yeah, saying trick or treat, mother, and then just trying to whack Michael Myers, and I'm like, that had that same exact feeling. That you could tell that's when the series was just out of ideas and just burned itself out.
Exactly. But, to the movie's credit, it's very critical of the sequel reboot.
Yes.
It follows all the tropes, but it dissects them. But at the same time, I think it walks a very fine line of it criticizes horror movies for kind of forcing social commentary where
Right.
maybe it doesn't. Not that horror has always been about social commentary. My issue with certain movies is I don't like it when it feels like the movie is kind of shoving it down the audience's throat, or when the social commentary is at the expense of making a good movie.
Yes.
Some of the best horror films out there have subtext social commentary, but it works with the greater narrative, and it's a great movie. I mean, there's a whole essay about how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is actually about veganism and the meat industry, but it's subtext. It's
Ah.
a way that you can interpret. It's not the movie shoving it in the audience's face. So it rightfully criticizes doing that, but it's also very critical over here of the kind of self-entitled toxic horror fan you meet in Reddit threads with, spoiler alert, are killers who are motivated to make a better Stab sequel by saying that they're tired of the movie sucking and they feel so entitled to a good sequel that they're willing to murder people to get it.
Right.
And I just feel like we've all dealt with toxic fans on the internet. We've all gotten into debates on Facebook and Twitter with people that just want to watch the world burn. And it's like, of course, the ultimate realization of that is they're just killing people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and at that point, they just take what is it? They're just taking what they love to such an extreme that even murder is justified when it absolutely is not. and that's when you realize that they're no longer fans. They're just maniacs. Like there's a, that they want to be able to try to justify their own actions by saying like, oh, we're just going to make a bet. Is it better move? Is it movie? But really, in the end, it's just right, as you just said. They're just like, it's like killing people,
And
and it's
the
just
funny the
crazy.
funny thing is, quite literally, I didn't plan this at all. So we're making this point now. When I did a written review, a spoiler-free one for the Halloween Year Round website.
Mhm.
Literally, someone in a Facebook group commented that their fan script for Scream 5 was better than this one.
Hmm.
And it's like, that's
Interesting.
exactly what the movie's talking about.
Right, exactly. And also like you worded it so well in terms of like horror movies and political commentaries and political and social commentaries, but at the same time though not to but not at the expense of the movie itself, because that's what it's not just for horror movies too. Like I 100% agree with you where you're coming from, and I have also been seeing it more in other films as well, like the new Star Wars as a trilogy, and of course, trying to think another one that,
We don't speak of the sequel trilogy.
yeah, yeah, I know what you mean, but yeah, and especially for me, like as a big Star Wars fan, like I was disappointed, with the newer, Star Wars films, and I just felt that,
As was I. As was
yeah,
I
yeah,
think though, one of the biggest mistakes, I'm going to talk a little bit about Last Jedi, which, mind you, I really liked parts of Last Jedi. But the main thing I didn't like was it felt like Ryan Johnson, which the guy's Knives Out is one of my favorite movies of the last decade. So he can
mm,
make a great movie, but it felt like in Last Jedi he was subverting expectations for the sake of doing it without
right,
any greater purpose.
exactly,
Scream 2022 subverts your expectations. Like the opening kill, Tara survives that. Every other Scream movie, the character dies.
see, that's something I
The
didn't know
the
myself.
whole the whole sequence of Deputy Hicks racing home to save her son. You think they're going the psycho route when Ghostface is waiting for
Right,
her, on her porch. So this movie subverted expectations, but it didn't do it just for the sake of doing it. It did it to deliver quite. I mean, you remember we're watching it, and I
yes,
literally yelled, "I did not see that coming!" When
yes,
Ghostface jumps out to Deputy Hicks. I was like,
yes.
"Oh,
Oh yeah, I was genuinely surprised myself. I'm like, is it holy? Like
yeah."
that was just crazy.
So this movie, it does the sequel reboot stuff. It subverts expectations.
Mhm.
It pays tribute to before, but it does it better, and it knows what it's doing. And to your, like I said before, my big issue, Scream 4, after watching this, Scream 4 is now my least favorite movie in the series. Because
Gotcha.
Scream 4, it tries to go the remake route, but it can never it wants to do both. It wants to have its cake and eat it. And it feels like it can never decide whether or not the younger characters are the main people or the legacy characters are.
Ah,
I liked with this one how Tara and Sam, they are the main characters.
right.
And
That
while
is true.
Sydney and Gail and Dewey are in it, they are in supporting roles, and their progression felt natural. So
Yes, I would agree with you there. I felt that when I saw it too.
case in point, back to Star Wars, how
Mhm.
many people were pissed off at, what did Luke become
Right.
after all that he went through
Yes,
to become a
absolutely.
hermit and to toss away his lights? That pissed fans off.
Yes. I was not happy about that.
But in Scream, it made sense that Dewey had become an alcoholic and was asked to retire after all the trauma he'd been through. It made sense that Gail, persistent and determined as she was, ambitious as she was, became a news anchor for a morning show. And it made sense that Sydney would move really far away from Woodsboro and just want to totally forget about this past life. And I related to her more now. Just, we see briefly she's a parent. And, there's that line where she's like, oh, I have kids now, so I'm not resting until this guy is in the ground. Like, until this killer is dead, I'm not leaving. We're going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did they.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's funny, like, as you had mentioned earlier about certain requels, like, going about it doing right, like one of my favorite films of 2021, like in addition to Spider-Man No Way Home, absolutely was Ghostbusters Afterlife. And mainly because and this I will be going into some spoilers for this one, so just heads up everyone.
Spoilers for Ghostbusters Afterlife too.
Right. Okay. But for me though, like what I absolutely loved about Ghostbusters Afterlife was, while it may not have been exactly the sequel that people had originally wanted, especially from like, back in the late 80s, it was in a way like the sequel we needed, where it was able to bring in a new cast while at the same time still paying tribute to the legacy characters. And I loved how respectful um, Jason Reitman was in terms of how he wrote every character. Everyone had their moment to shine. You could clearly see like how much love and detail went into it. I know like a lot of people like may criticize the whole, oh, they're bringing back Gozer, they're bringing back the Terror Dogs, they're just showing like a lot of like retreading stuff, and I understand that. But when they do at least introduce some new concepts and ideas, they work and they feel
Mhm.
natural. I loved especially how the whole like story centers around like Phoebe just rediscovering like who she is and what her family's about, and that the whole thing is about like at its heart is about Egon Spangler and what he was going through and how far he had to go in order to save like the world, like literally the world, like he's
Oh
trying to
yeah.
like like stop Gozer from coming back, and it cost him so much, and you could just see like how emotional people got around it. I mean, like Ray saying like oh he is it oh like I never want to talk to him again, until Phoebe's like, wait, I know what's happening. You got to hear me out, and you could just tell like I need to we need to get here. We need to
It it was a
help
passion.
him.
It was a passion project, and
Absolutely.
I think that's what's missing from a lot of these requels. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
problematic and flawed as they were, the Star Wars prequels were made with passion, and you can tell. They're disasters, but they're interesting, fun disasters. The sequel trilogy, on the other hand, feel like corporate products.
Yes. Agreed.
As much as I enjoy parts of Halloween 2018, it was meant to launch a new trilogy to make Universal a bunch of money. When I look at this new Scream movie, I look at Ghostbusters Afterlife, I see, I see labors of love. I was so
Yes.
the directors of Scream, they're known as Radio Silence. They directed my favorite movie of 2019, Ready or Not.
Ooh. Okay.
And they went in, they said that for Ready or Not, Scream was their biggest influence because they wanted to make a movie that was brutal and gory, but also clever and really funny at the same time. So they went into this kind of respecting it.
Yes.
And just everything from, the end credits saying for Wes at the end.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
But I will say, all the nice things I'm saying about Scream 2022, about how it does the requel right, and it's above all the others. It only works if this is truly the last Scream movie. If they attempt to do another one after this, it kind of negates the whole thing. Because the biggest thing that requels try to do, that this movie criticizes, is it tries to set up a new franchise. Halloween 2018, Jurassic World, Force Awakens. The thing that all of these have in common is that they all spawned trilogies. Ghostbusters Afterlife, we've yet to see where they're going to go with it.
Right. Yeah, they
But
kind of like left it a little ambiguous at the end.
they did.
Yeah.
But if it does spawn more sequels, as much as Afterlife was, a passion project, it sort of turns into corporate product if it's trying to spawn a sequel. That remains to be
Yeah.
seen. And I really, really hope that this is it, that we're done. And I think you almost have to be done because, they killed off Dewey. That was the one thing that all the Scream movies never did. Those three characters made it through every single one. It was even a criticism of Scream 4 that, there were no real stakes because Gail, Dewey, and Sidney all survived it.
Yeah. I remember how shocked you were when Dewey got killed, and I could actually, when I turned to you, like I could see like how shocked you were, like
Because
how,
they
yeah,
never did. I'm like, oh my
right,
God, they did it.
hmm
Poor Dewey.
yeah. Actually, the shot of like Ghostface like standing over his body, that shot, like like even though I've never seen any of the Scream films, like I felt like a weight had just been put on me, like as I'm watching it, like oh
Mhm.
my God, like this isn't like a joke now. Like this Ghostface is serious. This Ghostface just killed off like a character who like I could tell like had a lot of weight to him, and I'm like, and of course as you had given me that primer that Dewey had also been in the entire series, and I'm like, wow, like Ghostface ain't kidding around anymore. Like anyone can die in this movie now. There are no, like there is no holds bar at this point. You gotta,
Exactly.
yeah,
So I hope this is it. I hope that they don't try to do anything more with this. I think this was a
right.
one-time thing. I saw the TV show. There was a Scream TV show on MTV. Frankly, it sucked. I could only make it past the first couple episodes. But I want this to be the end. And if it is the end, then Scream 2022 will go down as the sequel reboot that did it right while also criticizing everyone else, while also tapping into very real debates, in the horror community. So
Yes.
any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts for me? Well, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I really loved how clever it was. Like I said, I love the satire, and like I said, just as a fan of horror movies, as well as also just like good smart writing, this definitely married the two very well. Like you could tell, like it's horror first, but it still has like those great comedic elements, but it still
Mm-hmm.
has that. It's basically like a horror movie with a real thinking brain, where it makes you think like, yeah, this makes sense, or yeah, I can see where they're coming from, but you're still drawn into the story. And even for someone like me, like I said, who's never seen a Scream movie before, this one, I enjoyed it so much that I want to go back and watch the other films. I want to see how this series developed, because if this is from, like I said, like two dedicated fans who love Wes Craven's work. I'm sorry, Wes Craven's work, and absolutely wanted to pay proper tribute and coming from a place of love. I want to see and I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street. I've seen the entire series, like minus that one reboot, but I want to see like how Wes Craven does commentary on horror. I'm now genuinely curious. I want to see the other films.
All
So yeah,
right.
like so I definitely give a personal recommendation to this one. Also, for those who are big time Ghostbuster fans, like absolutely Ghostbusters Afterlife should be on your list.
We really enjoyed it. We saw that with our whole group.
Absolutely. And I just loved, just how beautiful it was. It was a true love letter to Ghostbuster fans, like old and new alike. And just
Hmm.
its dedication to Harold Ramis as Egon Spengler was beautiful. Even I was tearing up near the end of it. And I didn't think that was going to be the case, but I just loved that as a film. It just really touched me because I
Hmm.
could tell it also was from a place of love as well. And yes, I understand it touches on some, you know, a lot of callbacks, but at the same time though, it still also forged its own identity, in its weird way. And I think a big part of that was with the cast, and a lot of it was also, like bringing forth like, a legacy character and having them like, be, you know, such an important like, moving force for the film itself. And that's what made it work to me. It came from a place of love. Like you could tell with the practical effects with the terror dogs. It's incredible. Like you rarely see physical effects like that in this day and age. And you could just tell how much passion went into it. I know like this is a Scream 2020 like review, and I like I said really loved it, but like I said, but connected with that, both as requels in a weird way, they both work. They both work very well. And like I said, I
Well, there's a
recommend
lot of
both.
overlap.
Absolutely. Oh yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. There's definitely a lot of overlap. And like I said, for someone like me who just loves like a good, you know, franchise overall, like I said, like, I grew up with Ghostbusters. I grew up with the original, the original Batman films. I grew up with, just so many like, like stuff from the 80s and 90s because, I was born in 85 myself. So, that, and I was also very fortunate to watch like older films with my dad. Like I can appreciate both, and I can appreciate like all that kind of thing. So I love like classic horror, like, the Wolfman and as a Dracula and the Mummy. But at the same time, I also can appreciate like, like a different take on it, like an American Werewolf in London, or like the Mummy 90s film with Brendan Fraser, and even like, like Bram Stoker's Dracula by is it Coppola. You can
Mm,
just, enjoy that kind of stuff because you can tell how much love and passion, and that's the most important thing of all. If a movie really has that love and passion, it can't fail. At least
agreed.
that's, yeah, exactly. As long as you have it and it's coming from a place of love, it's going to succeed. Whereas sadly, the new Star Wars trilogy and, the Jurassic World films, they're not succeeding because they're not coming from a place of love. It's just, oh, is it, oh, we have a shiny new franchise. Let's make as many movies as possible. Or, oh, is it, oh, let's just resurrect another like, it's like series that people like film series that people loved, and we're gonna make more money. Like
Hmm.
these two movies are definitely coming more from a place of as a place of love, where where the directors are given more freedom to do what they want, and you're seeing that return, and hopefully we'll see more of that because ultimately ultimately like that's what needs to happen, because if things are going to change, the way they have to change is they have to come from a place where it's not just all about money. It also has to be about respecting your audience, respecting like, what came before, and and working a little harder to make it all work. Because if you do, that return will come back tenfold. And you're seeing that right now. So those
Very
are
well
my personal
said.
thoughts. Thank you. Thank you.
Certainly this movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing watching this video? But go watch it again. And I think this movie rightfully tells us, what we really want and need out of horror, and that ultimately the thing we need is new ideas. So check out Scream, check out the channel, like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you will get a call from Ghostface.
Hmm.
We will be back there's plenty more horror stuff coming out in the next few months, so check back for that. As always, I'm Dave. This is Patrick.
Thank you again for having me, Dave, as always.
And every day is Halloween.